Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thank you once again for tuning in to this conversation about people's thoughts, or rather global project management experts' thoughts on all things to do with AI and project management. I'm really happy today that I've got a very noble guest with me, Rich Matson. Rich, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I would love to do that. So it's great to be here, Lloyd. My name is Rich Maltzman. I am a PMP since 2000. I have over 40 years of experience in the telecom industry. In parallel, however, very early on in that career, I started teaching both at work and eventually at university. And now I am a master lecturer at Boston University. So that's the brief introduction. More of that will spill out as we move along.
Fantastic. And the other thing is, Rich, haven't you authored many a book as well?
Yes, and generally it's co-authoring.
Yeah.
I need a project manager to help me with the book. But the first one really was called Green Project Management. It was about integrating the idea of sustainability thinking and more broad thinking in project management. And that actually brought me to meet you, Lloyd, because that book's ideas were the theme for the Beyond Project Management talk in Sofia, where we both were able to speak to a crowd of a few people, like a
Yeah.
thousand. And
Yeah.
then since then, a couple of other books, something like six or seven, have been co-authored. There was a follow-up to that first book on sustainability, aimed more at program and portfolio managers. And then I wrote a book with Dan Epstein on process and workflow. That was kind of the most technical book. And then a couple of books most recently with Jim Stewart on meetings. The animal
Mhm.
called project meetings. We tried to attack
Oh,
that, and those have been successful and well received. And then one with Loredana Abramo on competency. We found what we thought was a gap in project management competencies, mostly surrounding, at the time, what were called soft skills and now are called power skills.
mhm.
That's roughly it. And then I've written chapters in books like the AMA Handbook and the Green PMO book that just came out regarding project program portfolio management with a sense of sustainability.
Fantastic. Well, those subjects, I reckon, might have something to do with this conversation as we go forward. So, as you know, I like to keep these conversations fairly general and more
Sure,
like a chat, as it were. But
sure.
but you know, the subject of the day is all about AI and project management, and your thoughts about the benefits of AI and project management and the use cases. Do you want to kick off with some initial thoughts?
Sure. First of all, yes, it's everywhere. The first time that it became obvious to me that it's everywhere was in Atlanta at the PMI summit there. That's before Los Angeles, which was last year. And
Mhm.
at that conference, it was literally a hot button. And I know the expression a hot button, and at least I think it's an American expression,
Mhm,
a topic
mhm.
that everyone's discussing. But here it literally was a hot button because there was a button pin given to people as you enter that said PMXAI, meaning the intersection of project management and AI. And just about every talk um, at the conference was focused on AI, or at least mentioned it. It was almost like a mandatory. It seemed like almost a mandatory thing. And what the buzz, because I was also staffing a booth for Boston University there. That's where I'm now full-time staff. Um, the buzz was, what do we do as people? How do we handle this as project managers? How do we keep our relevance? Because you look at some of the things it can do, and they're astounding. And three words came out of that: be more human. Right. So we
Mm.
felt that as people walked by the booth, and I went to sessions and talked with people after sessions, um, the catchphrase with the people wearing their hot buttons was "be more human." If we exercise the things that we're good at, um, aided by AI, we can actually be better project managers, and our job stays relevant. Although, yes, a AI system, an agent can generate a Gantt chart, a schedule, a budget that will look really good. It will probably be wrong in at least one dimension and maybe in several. Um, it may have, it will find things that you wouldn't have. For example, in risk analysis, it's outstanding in identifying risks. But it doesn't know that Jim and Karen don't get along, and it doesn't know that this vendor has lost one of their key folks. Um, and just in general, expertise and relationships, it's not going to be able to do as well. And so it's this, if you're more human and you work well with AI, you'll still be relevant. But if not,
Yeah.
someone who is going to take your job.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were saying you knew it would be wrong. I could probably say the same the same statement to a project manager that's presenting me the plan as well.
Correct.
I'm playing devil's advocate,
Yeah.
obviously. So I'm quite intrigued about that because for me it's like, well, how wrong or how right? Do you feel that we're already at an age where it's right enough, if that's such a phrase?
It's right enough for a start, but this is what my colleagues and I have been writing about recently is it's right and possibly probably better than that project manager for a start.
Mm,
Um, but it's going to still take some back and forth between what it comes out with and what you really want
mm.
for it to be 100% value added.
Mm, 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 mm.
So, I mean, I've been astounded, impressed by some of the things that AI comes up with when it comes to project management, when it comes to teaching. I mean, I
Mm,
can
mm,
give,
mm,
my daily work, for example, creating a curriculum or an exam or help for an exam. I've been writing chatbots with ChatGPT, and I've created these little bots that help students prepare for a quiz. And the students are coming back to me saying, I've never done so well on a quiz because this has prepped me. And of course, the quizzes, ironically, are paper. We've gone back to,
yeah.
paper and pencil quizzes. We have to show some of the younger students what a pencil is and what paper is. They try to swipe to the next page. But they are also impressed at the way it works. But let's get back to project management. When it comes to things like construction projects, and the idea of a digital twin, kind of what I see behind you, right? There's amazing potential, not just potential, amazing already there technology that can provide an architect, a project manager with a plan that is pretty much correct.
Yeah.
However, if you only trust that, you may find that you'll have some significant catching up to do, right? You want that human expertise to look at that plan
Yeah.
as
Well,
well.
I think the language you used was it's a great start, and
Yes,
I think both of us know that the starting process is often the hardest bit, as it were, or certainly
yes,
one of the most time consuming bits.
yes.
So anything that can accelerate to get to the nub of those debates and trying to push Jim and Karen together
Yes.
to get those conversations. Got to be a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think project managers, and I like to call them project leaders, if they're beyond
Mm,
project management, if they've thought beyond time, scope, and cost,
mm,
suffer
mm,
from
mm,
writer's block.
mm,
Especially with an overwhelming project. Where do I start? Well, if you put some of the basic descriptors of your project into AI and say, look, I'm working on a project. It's a 5-story building. It's got these kinds of limitations. It's got these kinds of specifications. AI will get started. It's fun. It almost feels compelled to give you an answer. In fact, that leads to some comedy, and I think comedy is appropriate always as a way to learn. One of my colleagues, one of the professors at BU, actually typed in the following question to AI. He said, "When was the first football?" And this is the right football, your football, soccer.
You mean English football, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
was
yeah,
the
yeah. Of course, of
first?
course.
When was the first soccer championship played on Mars, the planet Mars? And it immediately came back with an answer. It was in March 2022. And besides just being shocked, the professor said, "That's so wrong. Let me point out that as far as we know, there's no soccer football being played on Mars." And it came back very apologetic and said, "Oh no, I assumed you meant Earth and blah blah blah." But the point is, it's compelled. That's the word he used. It feels compelled to answer.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
because if you know that going in, that AI feels compelled to give you an answer, you now know that it's sometimes going to make things up or hallucinate, and
Yeah.
therefore, again, I don't want to give the impression that I am opposed to or doubtful of AI. I'm just like any project manager. I have some caution when it comes to using it, but you make the point that it gives you a start. It gets you
Mm,
off the dime, as we say in the US.
mm,
It gets you off the
mm.
dime.
And there's a number of points you're covering there. I mean, first of all, please don't take this comment the wrong way, but both of us have some grey hair.
Or none,
And
or
well,
none.
you know that mine is going, as you can see by my short
Yes, go
haircut.
ahead. Yeah.
But the fact you are embracing the use of AI, just at a very basic level, says to me that here we are, an internationally renowned speaker, author, professional in this area is embracing AI to make their life easier.
Yes.
And for me, that says volumes about, the state of maturity of AI as well.
Yes, I agree. And I think it takes a certain level of maturity and flexibility for someone above a certain age
Mm,
to buy into the technology and not just say, well, this is just, it's just
yeah,
another technology, and or to be scared of it, which
yeah,
some project managers and universities took on that attitude, like we're gonna pretend it's not there. They took on an
yeah,
ostrich
yeah,
philosophy. The problem with that is your colleagues, your students, your
yeah,
competitors are not going to be ostriches. Their bird beak is way up in the air, and they're looking around,
yeah.
and they're going ahead of you because this is a powerful tool. Um, it's it's um, it's interesting. Some people say it's like the normal progression, right? From pen and paper and abacus, calculator, computer, spreadsheets. Each time one of those new innovations came out, people say, well, it's just like that. I heard an interesting interview, and I don't know the name of the person who was commenting. They said, this is not that. This is not that same kind of uh, leap. This is altogether different because of the capabilities of large language models and the fact that
Mm,
it's
mm, mm.
it's it's actually a paradigm shift, right? As
Yeah,
opposed to slide rule to calculator. This he didn't even have an analogy for it, but it's not the same as that kind of leap. With that said, it means that you should understand it. It doesn't mean you need to be an expert in large language
Mm, mm,
models or
mm, mm,
neural
mm, mm,
networks,
mm,
but you should
mm,
know about the behavior and the
mm,
capabilities and the problems, right? Like
mm,
things like
mm, mm,
soccer
mm, mm,
championships being played
mm,
on
mm,
Mars, right?
mm,
And that leads to this idea of prompt engineering and how important it is
mm,
to understand that this is a conversation. It's not
mm,
Google, right? People think of it as an advanced Google, and even the vendors like Bing have integrated it into their search. But you don't go to AI and just say who was the 16th president of the United States. You give it context, background, upload files, upload information, and then ask it, what you given from what you now know that I fed you, plus, and then either yes or no, plus yes or no, go to the internet. Because with my quiz preparation, I don't have it go. I want it to base the questions, the practice questions, the content on what I've conveyed to the students. So I tell it, do not search the internet, because then you're going to write a question that's unfair, right? It's going to be about Maslow's theory. And actually, I do cover it, but maybe it's about Maslow's theory, and I have never covered it, and the students will be angry, justifiably, because there's a question on their test on material they didn't cover. Now, that works for project managers as well, right? Do you want to work with only the files I've given you about the construction project that we're doing, or do you want to search best practices, of other construction projects in other countries and other continents? You have to be thoughtful when you're conversing with.
And of course, that, again, for me, it's a slight paradigm, because, again, shoot me down if you disagree, but we as humans are generally lazy, or maybe, again, a big, caveats there. Of course, I'm not lazy. The next person is lazy. I would never take a shortcut, And on the other hand, so you've got the instant answer, but on the other hand, we're saying, we can't completely trust this answer.
Right.
And you've got to find the time or find the mechanisms to validate that's the right answer. It's a bit of a contradiction there somewhere, isn't there?
It is. It's a quagmire. The brain spends its energy trying to not spend energy, right? The brain knows that it is one of the most energy hungry organs in the body, if not the most. And so it's always trying to find shortcuts. This is why we have heuristics. This is why we have, mental shortcuts. And now AI for some people is a shortcut. Now, if you're a project manager, you could just say, okay, the boss gave me this project. Let me hand it over to AI. And as you said, as a way to get started, that's not a bad idea. But you don't only or uniquely want to do that. So this idea of mental shortcuts is challenging for project managers and for instructors, because we want students to. This is the conflict we have at any university, and I've worked with actually several professors in the UK. We've talked this over about the idea of how do we want students to use AI or not, and we've taken the attitude that yes, we want them to jump in and use it, but we want the work to also have their own thoughtfulness and mindfulness. So the shortcut, to go back to what you said, is I have to write a master's thesis on this, and this, write it, right? And it will do it, right? And you can hand that in. Not wise, okay? Not wise, because you're not learning anything, right? And doing the research and discovering things and having, at least intellectual fun in that. But in addition, it's plagiarism. It's probably full of other people's ideas and not yours. Things can be wrong. The good news is you may have saved, a week's worth of work, because there's the paper. It just gave it to you, right? Write a paper. But the bad news is it's ethically wrong. It's fundamentally wrong, and it may just be capital W wrong.
I was thinking, as you were speaking there, Rich, I was thinking maybe it's about the use case. As in, if it's the simpler end of things, then probably it doesn't matter if there's a human interaction or human in the loop. Whereas if it's, the exam or the project plan for £1 billion building or whatever, then you do need extra validation.
Exactly. Especially if people's lives or health or there's sustainability aspects there, you definitely want to have some back and forth. Now, the interesting thing is and we're shifting I'm ending up shifting
Yeah.
the conversation a bit.
Yeah.
One of the things that people talk about is empathy. And,
Yeah.
we as humans have empathy and AI doesn't have empathy.
Yeah.
Actually, because it's been populated with hopefully good aspects of humanity. There are studies that where doctors say that the empathy, the bedside manner of an AI agent is superior to that of a human
Yeah.
because they're focused on that patient at that time. They're not running from bedside to bedside. And the doctors who are the doctors with the maturity, I guess, and
Yeah.
lower ego and willingness to
Yeah.
admit that will say, this can beat me. This can do a better job.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, you can, let's get this back to project management. If you're having a conflict in your project between team members, um, if you feed it the right information and give it the context, it can actually come up with some
Yeah.
very, very good solutions about how to resolve a conflict amongst your team members. Again, vetted by a human, because it may suggest something completely that's going to be disastrous, right? So you would, I have been surprised because I teach a project leadership course and we have exercises where there are conflicts, right? We have and they're taken from real cases. So here's these four people, they're trying to decide on a new CRM system. These things have happened, these conflicts have broken out. What should we do next? And the consultant who
Yeah.
gave me this case has what she came up with in the real world, and it's great, and it worked, and she got paid. But you can also feed this into any of these AI systems like Gemini or ChatGPT, and surprisingly good advice
Yeah.
comes out.
And also it's not one off. The AI doesn't get tired after an
Nope.
80-hour shift or whatever, and is completely consistent in terms of, like you said, once you know the context, the way that delivery happens. So, possibly there's a benefit there. I want to come back to this human piece in 1 second, if I may, but I just
Sure.
want to keep pushing on this trust piece and and I guess this is where we're seeing the advent of data trusts or some sort of quality gate of the knowledge that's being fed. And as an organization, how would you mitigate that? Is it these deliverables have to go through this panel, or oh my golly, all the benefit of efficiency is then getting
Yes.
stuck in some panel? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think this is where proprietary AI comes in, where you have a firewalled AI system that uh, doesn't let things in or out that could be
Mm,
dangerous. So I have actually done some consulting with a pharmaceutical, and with a couple of them actually. And one of them, absolutely forbids the use of. I mean, they're working on new molecules, right? That
yeah, yeah, yeah,
they lose their billions of dollars of potential revenue if a drug molecule gets kind of out there. And similarly, if bad data comes in, so they are very, very strict about having a proprietary AI system that's significantly firewalled. Now, firewalls aren't necessarily perfect, and nothing's perfect. But the trade-off is, do they want to not have this capability of having AI, like you said, work tirelessly to simulate and try different combinations and make suggestions about tests, lab trial techniques, and so forth. So I would say that if it does all depend on the data. Somewhere, somehow, that AI system that my colleague typed in the championship of the football game,
yeah,
somewhere, somehow, someone had told it that the soccer was being played on Mars.
yeah,
It didn't create that from scratch. So
yeah.
so like you said, a stack of data, it has to be good quality for you to make for the large language model to
And,
make to predict the next word or the next paragraph.
and even if it is secure,
Hmm.
that doesn't necessitate that there's still mistakes. When you load the data in, it might be the wrong data. Even to the point where, I don't know, they've checked the number of manhole covers on a road, but they've clicked the wrong amount when they've done their clicker, or their IoT device was failing.
Right. They
So
add another zero, right? They add another
yeah,
zero to the number, or they leave out a
yeah,
zero, and everything's off. And AI doesn't necessarily have the same form of thinking that would say, no, that doesn't look right. They can't be 73 billion manhole covers in Leeds. They
yeah,
just can't. They just cannot be.
yeah. So the other thing is, I can imagine where you have an AI checking the AI. So at the moment, these are early days. The old wise people validate. Sorry, I don't know why I said old. The wise
Because you're
people
looking at me.
validate. No. I'm putting my foot right in here, aren't I? But the wise person validates the AI, and I must admit, I was in quite an interesting chat, and somebody said, well, yeah, but what happens when the wise people do get older and retire and all of that? So who checks those people? So I honestly think that the likelihood is that we will get AI checking AI.
Well, that's happening already, right? You have, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but there's something called GPT-0, which is a validator to check whether something's been written by AI. And as far as a practice, I will often take an output from AI and put it into a competitive AI system and say,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think of this? In fact, it's kind of interesting and funny that you can write a question. For example, you might, let's stick with project management. You might go to
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT, strictly with ChatGPT, for example, and ask it, give it the context and say, write a project plan for this project. And it will give that to you, and then you pump it right back into ChatGPT and say, "What do you think of this plan?" And it'll say, "Who told you that? That's ridiculous. That doesn't work." I mean, things like that have happened where it
Yeah,
itself will question what it just told you seconds ago.
yeah,
Um, so having some kind of validation, human or AI,
yeah,
absolutely makes sense.
yeah,
But again,
yeah,
you made a really good point at the beginning. Get off the dime, right? AI can
yeah.
help you get off the dime, get started, break that writer's block. When it comes to risk, in particular, risk identification, right?
Mm,
So we all know about being about culture, and some cultures, like American culture, tends to be pretty optimistic,
mm,
which means when you start a project and you're supposed to list all the things that can go wrong, that culture, not just American culture, but an optimistic culture, might leave out a bunch of risks because it's kind of not nice to say all these nasty things that can go wrong. Whereas
mm,
AI is more like Northern European, or where I lived in the
mm.
Netherlands for 2 years, like a Dutch culture. And it's just going to go, boom, this can go wrong, this can go wrong, this can go wrong, right? Very
Yeah,
direct,
it's a
very
lawyer.
direct.
Yeah,
And you want that, right?
yeah,
Because you're not going to be able to respond to any threats that you don't identify. So this is where it's really good in terms of, again, getting off the dime. So risk identification is one it's particularly good at. And then you can even push back. Have you thought, is that it? Can you think of any more? And again, it's compelled to give you even more negative,
yeah.
more, negative or positive risks.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
we
It's,
have found in experimenting with this in consulting and in teaching that it's outstanding at risk identification.
yeah, it's fantastic, and great to hear another use case there
Hmm.
around getting off the dime, as it were. Um, if I may, if I
Hmm.
just switch the conversation
Sure.
slightly in terms of where do you think this is all going, and just a couple of little seed plants from my perspective.
Sure.
One, when you mentioned the digital twin earlier and simulation, I was thinking if we could coalesce both the design outcome and the execution, so a living, breathing digital twin, or I don't know, Gantt chart 2.0. I'm not quite sure what the name would be. I was thinking, that would be really powerful in some sort of virtual world. And then, so I'll see what you think of that. And then, secondly, sitting alongside that, back to what I said earlier about human and human in the loop and empathy and all of that sort of stuff. So, where's it all going, Rich?
Well, one thing that came to mind immediately when you talked about where's it going is the way we get input. Right now, we sit at a terminal and we type this in. Now, with the capability of supercomputers that we have, it can be visual, right? So one of the things, for example, that can be done in real time with construction is you can use a camera or drone and show the construction site, do a 360 on a construction site instead of typing in data. It's absorbing that information and saying, oh, wait, there's a safety issue over here. This well doesn't look like it's done properly. So the means of interaction, the human factor, if you will, is going to change significantly. Conversational AI, where you just, kind of like Alexa or any of these other tools, which, by the way, have been AI. That's the other thing. We've been using AI for a long time. Right. And people it wasn't a buzzword. Right. So another way to make you feel more comfortable about the use of AI is the fact that it has been here for a long time. To your point, the idea of having a kind of living digital twin that exists at BU. We have the Data Science Center, which if you come and visit, you'll see it's a Jenga construction. So each floor is off by several meters, and there's green space in between. And that entire building has a live digital twin. It was designed with a digital twin. It has a live digital twin so that if a valve fails, the system knows it. The system can show on a screen or a series of screens, like a NASA central control, what's going on, how it can be fixed. It even can be self-healing to some extent. That's already here, right? So if you ever happen to be in Boston and drive down Commonwealth Ave,
I'm booking my flight now, Rich.
You will see a very striking building, which some people hate because it's very odd looking. Some people love, but it. In fact, I can provide you for your show notes. I can provide you a really interesting drone video of this building where the drone flies in through the building and around it, and films the entire thing. That kind of to me embodies the idea you're talking about. That this is more. This is less of a computer thing that techies use and is more of an available thing that everyone uses, kind of like the internet, right? At first, the internet was DOS, was a green screen, right? And we type in, a command, and now it's, hey Siri, hey Google, what's this, what's that, and you don't realize. In fact, my phone is already responding. It's seamless. So I think AI will become, I think that's the word, much more seamless, which can be dangerous without guardrails. Right, because
I was going to say, and this does segue into the second one about humans, but this principle of guided analysis that you mentioned there, the building being self-healing, and if I just take that to a bigger extent, and thinking about projects and sort of leading us on this journey towards. Yes. The outcome, and then obviously back to your guardrails. Just tell me, what do you mean by guardrails? Just for the general listener.
I mean that the AI does not have the control. It's the control. It's not the information. It's the control that it's providing. I think information is part of it, the data set and so forth. Like you said, bad data is going to yield bad results. But also, if that self-healing building decides that there's a fire, there really isn't, right? So bad data, and starts putting all the sprinklers off. Now you have flooding, and there's no way. If there's no way to turn it off, that's a guardrail, right? An ability for a human to be able to turn it off, an ability to curb what the system is doing. In fact, I hate to use this example, but I feel like I'm compelled to. The Boeing 737-8 Maxes, the crashes that took place in Indonesia and Ethiopia, those weren't AI per se, but it's the same principle, right? They put in a system that detected a stall right? The nose
Mm.
was going up too much. The system would detect that and point the nose down, right?
Mm.
And pilots weren't told. Pilots weren't
Mm.
trained about the way the system worked. So they're trying to fight the system and point the nose down, and it's pulling the nose back up. And all they had to do was press one button, an MCAS defeat button, and it would have stopped it. That's a guardrail that they didn't even know they had, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I mean by a guardrail, something
Yeah.
to defeat what the system is doing. The software itself isn't really the issue. It's the control. It's the fact
Yeah.
that the software now is forcing this plane down because it thinks it's going to stall because it's going up too fast. And the
Yeah.
reason it thought it was doing that is that the attack angle of attack sensor had failed. So again, it was bad data. It was
Yeah,
bad
and
data.
that human the example's good for me. That human that wasn't trained, or certainly didn't sink in with the adoption of that
Right.
button, as it were. Is there's another challenge there, isn't there? There's the how do you know the transfer of knowledge has happened, but also, for me, it's back to this empathy type piece as well. And I know I'm mixing two sort of examples there because when you were talking about the AI's bedside manner and it was better and all of this sort of these blurred lines between the man and the machine is really interesting in terms of where is it all going.
Yes. If I go back to that the Boeing 737-8 Max example, and by the way, if your listeners want to follow up on this, there's a tremendous but tremendously depressing two-part series on Netflix called Downfall,
Mm,
which describes the entire thing, and
mm,
it needs that kind of coverage
mm,
um,
mm, mm,
because the
mm, mm.
background is really important. Anyway, that same one of those flights that crashed, the flight the day before, same flight, same plane, same problem. There was a pilot as a passenger on that flight, and he noticed the plane doing this motion of up and down. He went up to the
Mm.
cockpit and said, "Hey, you got to press that button and defeat this." And
Wow.
and so the people on that plane happened to be lucky. I mean, that's you talk about karma or whatever. That
Yeah.
happened to be a pilot. This next doomed flight did not have the same luck. And
Yeah.
these people, when they look at the flight recorder data, you can see the altitude was doing this because
Yeah.
they were pushing it down, the plane was pushing it up, and
Yeah.
the very very sad fact is that they could have pressed one button and
Yeah.
avoided that.
Yeah.
But again, the guardrail is not related to the power of AI. It's related to what we do with that power, the
Yeah.
control we give it.
Yeah, and again, it's all interrelated with what we were saying earlier, which is how does a company create its guardrails if it's not clear now? And I know some companies are starting to scratch on this. I think it's likely that in the medium term, short to medium term, will certainly be a topic of debate.
To bring it back to risk identification, the irony here is you could have AI give you all of the worst possible outcomes that AI could yield if it had full control, right? And if it
Yeah,
was honest, and I guess we could say it should be honest because it's just zeros and ones, it
yeah,
would be able to say, oh, if I do this and this, it could cause a flood. So put a control. So that's a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
marker for a guardrail. If the plane, if the nose is pulled down, it could cause confusion amongst the pilots and end up
yeah.
causing the plane to crash. So you could actually use AI to help it tell you where you should put the guardrails.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I get
Interesting.
it. I get it. To come back to this human piece, and
Yes.
I'll just remind you because I think you've got a book coming out in this type of area as
Yes.
well.
Yes. Yes.
What's the name of the book?
So the book is called AI Powered Leadership. And the subtitle is Mastering the Synergy of Technical and Human Expertise. And the idea is all around a laser. And why am I mentioning a laser? Well, a laser is actually an acronym that I won't remember now because I haven't had enough coffee, but it's light amplification by the stimulation of emitted radiation, something like this. And what is a laser? It is light, regular light, like daylight, that's bouncing back and forth, um, so that when it comes out, it's cohesive, it's powerful, it's focused. In the book, we use this analogy that if you have good back and forth with AI, your output is cohesive, powerful, and focused, right? If you just ask AI to do something, it will give you flashlight. But if you go, kind of every color and spread out wide, if you, however, do this honing back and forth and use your power skills, as PMI calls it, like empathy, like good communication skills, like conflict management, y along with AI, you will end up with better outcomes. And there's 4 authors, and there's 4 main chapters. Mine is mostly about these power skills. So PMI has identified what used to be called soft skills, squishy skills, people skills, leadership, side of the PMI talent triangle, now is called power skills. And so I give several examples, real examples of back and forth prompting, where if you let AI help you with the power skills and you help AI with your power skills, you end up with better results. Project managers tend to come from technical backgrounds, which means they may not be the world's best appliers of power skills, right? And I'm guilty myself, 2 engineering degrees. So AI can help you. Goes back to this idea of bedside manner, right? AI can help you, and you can help it in terms of, giving it the best possible context, giving it the fact that these 2 people don't get along, or that there's been a conflict in the past between these folks, or that these 2 people are going out, right? AI doesn't know that. So if you have the wherewithal to let AI give you this powerful output, you're going to have better projects from a human perspective. And by the way, this is one of the themes of the book. Still, even now, and even 10 years and 50 years from now, I would assert projects are being done by people, right? So, in fact, when people ask me, what does a project manager do? It's getting value delivered through others. I use 5 words: getting value delivered through others. Others now has to include AI, but other people, right? Through others. When I first came up with that 5-word definition of project management, others meant humans.
Exactly.
Now it means agents and bots as well, but it always will include people. And that means you should be wise about people skills or power skills. So there's an entire chapter devoted to the 12 power skills. It goes through each of them. Make sure you know what they are, but also gives examples of prompts and exchanges back and forth that yield a better outcome. And then there's a chapter on prompt engineering, the chapter on where AI is going in the future. So it's I think it's a timely book.
It sounds like a timely book. Now, we're talking of time, we're starting to run out of time. So if I may,
Yes.
In terms of a takeaway that and it's very hard with such a broad subject, I'm sure, but is there sort of one piece of a takeaway of this conversation for you?
I would say back and forth. Make sure you use this idea of a back and forth with AI. Learn prompt engineering. Learn about from practice what AI does, and if you have the opportunity to do so, learn how to train it. Try training a bot, and your own chat GPT, or whichever brand. If you have that capability, I have found that to be highly educational, because it's like sometimes talking with an adolescent. You ask it to do something and it either refuses or does it the wrong way, and you say, no, do it this way, and then it will do it that way for once or twice, and then it will change, and you have to keep training it. And that back and forth has been exceedingly educational for me. Finally ending up with something that was a product that students can use. In my case, this quiz preparation, but it could just as well have been a project management risk management bot.
Fantastic.
So the takeaway is never use AI like a search engine. Always use it as a conversation.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Rich, for your time today. I'm just going to add a little bit on the end there of a takeaway, which is get off the dime, and get on with it, as it were. So thank you once again. Anyway.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to be here.